Welcome back to another episode of Contractor Secrets with Trade Business Accountants. My name's Warren Peachey, and today I'm going to be speaking with Jason Gavranic. Jason has a civil engineering degree, a business degree, and he's got 25 years experience in construction, project operations, and executive level management throughout all levels of infrastructure, construction, building, and services work. Jason's the managing director of two companies, Pristine Consulting and JDN Consulting and Engineering Solutions, specialising in the provision of project management, asset management, electrical, maintenance and building services integration in the building, construction and mining industries. That's a lot of stuff. He's got a long history of successfully delivered projects under his belt with plenty of valuable insights learned along the way. Jason, welcome to the show. How are you doing this morning?
I'm well, Warren, and thanks for having me, mate.
Oh, that's great. Awesome. We like to start these episodes by saying, and asking the question is, how did you get into construction? What's your backstory? What's the story of, where you come from? How did you get there? And what drove you towards a career in project management?
Yeah, well, for me, go right back to the beginning. I'm a first generation Australian. My parents were a Croatian background, come across to Australia sort of in the 60s and 70s. And built a life for themselves over here. And like a lot of people on the West Coast, especially like the Slavic and the Italian and even Portuguese sort of immigrants that come across, they either got stuck in market gardening or fishing, one of the two. And my family was very much in market gardening. And then from there, I had a father who was in concrete, concrete finisher and all that sort of stuff. And in the building game, my grandfather was a boiler maker. My uncle became a boiler maker. Another uncle was a civil engineer. So everyone was in some sort of form of construction.
So construction was the natural way to come.
I didn't know any better. And, being sort of from the old, my family from the old country, we didn't have weekends. You either were in the market gardens, or if Dad was particularly annoyed because I'd come home late from being in the nightclubs the night before, he'd grab me by the ear and say, right, we're going out to do concrete today. So feeling pretty seedy on a concrete finishing sort of job was never great. So I learned pretty quickly that, construction was in the blood, but probably for me, it wasn't a case of being hands-on. I wanted to sort of run projects and that sort of stuff more so than anything. And it was almost an expectation from the family as well. Like Dad never wanted me to follow 100% in his footsteps, had no problems with me being in construction, but was like, we come out here to give you guys a better life. So we want you to take the next step. So the next step naturally felt like going into sort of that management of projects. So for me, it wasn't much of a decision to be made. I was one of those lucky kids at high school who sort of knew at 15, 16 where my career path was going to go. And it's interesting, I've got kids similar age now who have no idea what their interests are. And I was very different. So it's something that's been almost difficult to deal with, when you have such clarity around what you want to do, and then you see your kids have no idea. It's like, what do you mean you have no idea? So it's made things interesting. But then, from there, mate, obviously went through the typical stages of going through university. I did a double degree in engineering and commerce. And the reason for doing the commerce was I knew I didn't want to be an engineer in a design house. I wanted to be out on the sites. I wanted to get involved in projects. It just felt like doing some commerce and having some of that sort of financial and commercial background and contract background would be useful. Maybe not initially, but definitely long term. So that's sort of where I headed. And then from there, it was a case of as a lot of us do here in WA, you were sort of sent out to the mines or sent out remotely to do a project. And they eventually remember you after about 5 years and bring you back to the city. So, but it was a good way to sort of work your way up the ladder quicker, because you sort of had to take a lot of responsibility for a lot of the stuff yourself. And it's interesting to sort of see what the industry's changed like over the last 25 years. The early projects that I worked on, even as a graduate or a very young site engineer, there'd be you and a supervisor, and you'd manage everything, quality, safety, the whole lot. Now, fair enough, the level of safety and all that sort of stuff, all the documentation wasn't what it is today, but you learned a hell of a lot really quickly, because you had to get involved in everything. It wasn't.
I guess that's one of the things, isn't it? WA, remote work, There's no just dipping your toe in. It's like you're in boots and all, sink or swim sort of arrangement. And that's a really good learning grounds, for that sort of thing. Now, Jason, you've worked on some really big clients. I'm reading your client list: BHP, Main Roads, Pilbara Minerals. Delivering some of these amazing projects. Standouts like the Smart Freeway. You provided supervisory experience to Ventia, for installation, testing, commissioning of ITS equipment. This is, Perth's first smart freeway. The project was a big deal, 54 million budget. Can you walk me through your experience on that one?
Yeah, so with that one, I mean, the business JDN that we provided some supervisory experience, but myself personally, I was actually brought on to be the alliance director for the project. So not only were we supplying some supervision on site, but I was in charge of the entire project, which was really interesting because it was, like you said, it was Perth's first smart freeway, or managed motorway, if you like. Now it's not anything new to the world or to Australia, but definitely to Perth it was. We had, now for those who don't know, ITS is intelligent transport systems, and it's all about just making sure that we keep congestion down, because if you can deal with incidents on motorways quickly, you reduce congestion, which means traffic keeps flowing. So and it was the first one being done here, and that Main Roads didn't want to just do the cookie cutter approach. They wanted to have an exemplar project. That was one of the values of the project, was that they wanted an exemplar project, where almost to the point where if people talked about managed motorways and smart freeways going forward, they wanted to use Perth as the example. So which is interesting.
That's a lot of pressure, Jason.
It is.
We've never done this before, but we want it to be to stand out.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want just what everyone else has done. We want to take it next level. So it was an interesting way to tackle the project, because we all walked in sort of knowing a little bit, having seen, there was a lot of guys who had come across from the UK, and this is something that's been in the UK for a long time. So they brought some knowledge from there. And then they'd gone across to Victoria and spent some time with Vic Roads and Transurban and those sort of guys to get an understanding of what was going on. But even so, we based our initial designs around what we thought the client wanted, and then we sort of got to a point where we were nearly 100% of the design complete, and all of us realised almost collectively that no, it's not quite what we're looking for. We've actually gone down the cookie cutter approach. We want it to be more than this. So we almost had to restart, the design when we were sort of well into it, which made things really interesting. But at the same time, to sort of push those boundaries and try things that hadn't been tried before. Like, we were the first ones to introduce what they call automatic incident detection. And it's effectively a radar system where you have a radar every circa 250 meters along the freeway. And it literally picks up anything that's stationary on the freeway for a period of time. So if a box falls off a car, the radar will pick it up straight away, which sends an alarm system back to the central office of Main Roads, if you like, and they can act on it immediately, which means, you haven't got something which is blocking the freeway for half an hour or an hour before they act on it. They're acting on it almost immediately. So to be able to not only introduce something like that, but then go through the testing regime and then watch it, come to fruition and work was, like I said, it was a lot of hard work, and we probably questioned ourselves a lot of the time early on, thinking, what are we doing? Why are we doing this for?
So what you're saying, Jason, there's a lot of technical aspects about building road, and it was an unknown. And also you got project team from a diverse background, and you're at the top of this. You had to bring it all together. And look, personally, I've worked on some major freeways and roads and things. And one of the things that I found is, if you got teams spread across 11 kilometers, is sometimes it's like trying to herd cats. It's like, oh, there they are over there, I've got to go speak to them. A lot of this was prior to mobile phones. We had radios in vehicles, and trying to get everyone aligned and in the right areas is. So from, there's a highly technical from a design, but there's also the delivery. Yep. What was your personal experience in bringing everyone together? What were the challenges that you faced to on that to get that all functioning well?
Yeah, I mean, for us, the project was an alliance. So it was basically, we had BMD, who are, a large civil contractor, Queensland Queensland based, but over here in WA now as well.
Yeah.
Ventia, another large, more electrical ITS maintenance, freeway maintenance type partner. Arup were our design team, and then Main Roads. You had 4 companies with four very different cultures, so you had to deal with that issue first. Civil guys can be very, rip, tear, bust. Let's get the job done. Then you've got your, the ITS electrical guys, Ventia, who are probably a bit more refined. Let's dot I's, cross T's before we do anything. Then, the designers are always a different kettle of fish again. They definitely do things a bit differently to us guys out on site. And then you've got the client who, at the end of the day, okay, fair enough, they want to make sure that, it's done for a certain price in a certain time frame. But at the end of the day, their key driver is getting what they asked for. So you've got, 4 very different cultures, 4 very different sets of people all trying to do one project where there's a lot of new stuff, a lot of new technology. So one of the hardest parts was actually getting those cultures to align, because what I tended to find is when things were going well, we worked well together, but the minute something would fall over, everyone will revert back to what they know. So even though you're building a great alliance culture in the team, the shit hits the fan. Everyone goes back to what they know doing. So the civil guys will go back to being rip, tear, busts, and the ITS guys will go and do what they do. So it's trying to manage them and make sure that they stay with the culture that we had built within the team. So that was one thing that was interesting to deal with.
So the communication management was a more, wasn't the lack of technical expertise. It was, how do you go, okay, all these cultures are there, and then bringing the communication management as saying, hey, this factor is so important in project management. That's really interesting. So how did you actually specifically, from a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, what did project management look like on a big project like that?
With that one, for me, it was a lot more about relationship management, like you said, communication management. So just, empowering certain people to run their teams. And I'm very big on that. You can't be a project manager who does everything for everyone. You've got to have the right players in the team, recognize what your strengths are, work to them, but then fill your weaknesses with the right people. I feel that, if you work too much on your weaknesses, you're never going to actually improve, because typically you're not interested in fixing your weaknesses. You want to do what you like doing, so
play to the strengths.
Play to your strengths, exactly. So get people in to look at the areas where you're weak in and make sure they manage their teams, and then empower them to actually do that. That was critical within that. And then I would have weekly management meetings, or what we call alliance management team meetings, to get alignment, not only with where we were going with the project, but where we were financially, what our quality impacts were, how was our safety, how are we dealing with the public, the community stakeholders, all the key factors that you have on these large projects. So at least I always had a finger on the pulse on where things were. I may not be down the detail, which is important when you're sort of at the top of the tree. You can't be in the detail. What is it, the forest for the trees, that sort of stuff. But you need to have an understanding of where things are at, and you need to be able to act quickly. And that's, I think, in a situation like that, where you've got very different cultures and very different ways of doing things, you need to be in a position where you can make decisions quickly and show that the decisions you make are best for project, not best for a particular party within that team. And from my point of view, I wasn't aligned to any of those companies. I was a contractor coming in. I'd been contracted, so I wasn't a BMD employee. I wasn't a Main Roads employee. I was me. so
I was somewhat neutral in the process. Yeah,
correct. And that really helped the process, and I think it really helped get the best out of the project. I think if it had been someone who was an employee of one of those entities, some of the issues we ran into would have then taken a bias towards the company they work for. Now, that's an assumption that I'm making, but I think, like I said, when things get difficult, people tend to go back to what they know. So I don't think we would have had the outcome that we did had it been someone who was aligned with a particular company. And that's not to say that it was my doing. I think if anyone had been independent in my role, capable of running a project, would have been the right choice.
I guess it's all about that inclusion and getting that project on the right pathway, and always putting the project ahead of the individual. As here, we're trying to reach a common goal here. and what's the best outcome for that. That's a great approach. And
Yeah.
now, Jason, one of the things that I've learned about you is you are a project turnaround expert. All these big projects,
Yeah.
people that come to know, it's like, hey, if we got a project going south, ring Jason, he'll come and sort it out. Could you share with us a project that you might have been involved where you got that fire, call, this project's burning down, we need a turnaround?
Yep.
Can you explain a project that you've been involved in? What did that look like? How do you, what's the first thing you do if you're turning around a project that is going south?
Yeah, well, I suppose for me, just probably just a step back before I get into that, I had been working for your tier ones for about 20 years. And I got to a point where some of the things I was seeing them do to subcontractors, morally didn't work for me. So I thought, you know what, I'm getting out of here. I'm going to go and help subcontractors. And my motto back then was, I'll help you screw back, because they were getting screwed over a lot by the big players. And I thought, you know what, they need some help here. So I've been doing that for a little while. And then I get a phone call out of the blue from an old workmate. I hadn't seen him for about 3 years. And he goes, "Oh, have you heard about the Madagarra Bridge project?" Now, just so you're aware, Madagarra Bridge is if you ever watch sporting events here in Perth, they got the new Optus Stadium, which everyone raves about. It's a great stadium, but there's an iconic bridge literally just outside of it, 3-arch bridge, walkway bridge, which is sort of part of the entire precinct. That had been a real problem project for a while. It had started off as a joint venture. Issues happened, then they turned into alliance. There were still problems there. And my background, again, like I mentioned before, being the son of a concreter, my background is mainly in the concrete structure side of things. So I get a phone call saying, listen, they're having problems out in the bridge. They've got the steel structure there, but the concrete walk deck, they've got no one to look after that part of the project. And I said, oh, yeah, okay. So when does that need to be finished by? And this is the phone call I received was in May. I think it was May 2018 from memory. And they said, oh yeah, they want it opened in May. And I said, well, there's no deck there. No one's going to be able to walk over anything in May. So I think you got the wrong person. Miracles, it'd be impossible I can do. Miracles take a bit longer. But anyway, being the sort of person I am, I thought, you know what, I'll go have a look. And I had a conversation with the guys, and it was the case of, best we can do is, we're May now. It's probably August, September before we have people walking across this. But and they were like, well, no, the ministers come out and said, Chelsea Football Club are coming here in July to play at the new stadium. We need to be able to walk across the bridge in July. And I'm thinking, how are we going to do this? But again, not one for saying no to a challenge. Took it on. And for me, it's always, some people will jump headfirst into the technicality straight up. Okay, how much concrete do I need? Reinforcement, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. I would tend to take the first week and take a step back and analyze the relationships, what's going on out there. Because what you don't want to do is be the person who comes in and you've had people on that job for 2 years who have busted a gut to get to where they are. Things aren't working, but they've put their life into the project, and they get someone come in and tell them what to do. You can't just go in there. I'm very big on building relationships first. So I'll actually spend a bit of time getting to understand who's who in the zoo, what they've been involved with, where their problems have been, what their issues have been, and then start to work on those first. Then I'll start to look at the technicalities to understand, okay, what do we need to do? What order does it need to be done in? Where are we going to get the best bang for our buck? And then once I've got an understanding of that, then it's, okay, who have I used in the past? Which relationships have I built in the past with particular subcontractors or key players that I can bring on board to help me get this over the line? So the technicality and actual construction part of it is almost the last thing I look at. Whereas a lot of other people I've worked with in the past, that's the first thing they go into, and they just repeat the same mistakes that have been happening to that point. So with that particular bridge, like I said, coming in May, did a lot of analysis on the people, who I needed to talk to, who I needed to deal with, come up with a plan myself, and then pretty much told the guys, listen, just keep out of my way. I've got a plan in place. Sometimes you're not probably going to like what I see. You might be out of step with how you're trying to do things here, but don't worry, it's going to be done safely. The quality will be perfect, all that sort of stuff. But just keep out of the way. I'm going to be bringing in my people. We're going to get it done. And we managed, initially they weren't thinking about getting any of the deck poured until about sort of August, and we actually got our first deck pour in late June and had the Premier and the Minister walking across the bridge in the first, I think it was the first week of July, or about the 7th or 10th of July. So, which was about 2 weeks before Chelsea got across. So
that's a fantastic result.
Oh yeah, we managed to get page 3 of the West Australian over here because people couldn't believe it that we actually got there. I think the first port, 28th of July. So within about 6 to 7 weeks of getting onto site, not only did we not, at that point we didn't have a walkway at all. We managed to get it to a point where we had the first part of the deck poured, and like I said, people walking across. Now the bridge itself, if you looked at it, there were still a few things to fix up. It wasn't finished, but the goal was, to get people walking across it. It wasn't to have it finished. It was to get pedestrians on the bridge. And that was probably the other thing, is the understanding of exactly what were the minimum requirements of the client. A lot of people will come in and think we've got to get everything done by August. No. This is what we have to get done. The rest we can do afterwards. It's fine. So it's that getting that real clarity. That's probably the other part I missed in the conversation. There was getting that real clarity about what the minimum objective is by the time frame you've got.
It's interesting because the stadium itself, where the football was being played, is really the main act.
Yep.
The bridge was really there as a conduit, and it's like taking away the focus. It's like, how do we make this project then not the focus of attention? If people are walking across it, they'll bypass, the bunting and various things that, landscaping or lighting may be temporary or something like that. Which, that's a really good analogy on that is, minimum viable option is, what are we trying to achieve here?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, when they actually opened for that game, and the importance of the bridge was, you've got, it's a 60,000 seat stadium, of which 20-odd thousand people will come from the western side of the stadium, which is effectively coming from Perth. You've got to cross the river, so you need the walkway, whereas the other 30 or 40,000 will come via the train and bus station, which is on the opposite side. So you needed to have that access, otherwise it caused all sorts of public transport issues for the government. So and that first game they opened for, we had barricades down one side of the bridge where guys were still tightening up the balustrading, and we had painters overhead still painting and all that sort of stuff. But
don't lean anything on as you're walking through.
That's right. Yeah. It's okay if you're wearing white because everything's white.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you're in a bit of trouble. So it was that was critical. It's really getting understanding of who was there, what the minimum requirements were, and then leaning on the relationships that were either still there or the people that I trusted and that I could. The guys who I know I can stretch a little bit. You'd put a target. The guys I was using, the concrete subcontractor I use, I pretty much use them everywhere I go where I know I'm in a bit of strife, and I know how to lean on them enough that I'll put a stretch target in front of them, which they think they can't get, but yet they challenge themselves enough to do it. Yeah. It's not so unrealistic. They go, mate, it's just not going to happen. It's just enough they think, no, we can't do that. And then when they go away for 24 hours, they come back and go, you know what, we've got a plan. We think we can do it. So,
So Jason, what you're saying essentially is really relationships is everything in construction.
Yeah.
It's a people business. So, to turn a project around, go in, make yourself known, who you're working with. And the next thing is, understanding their core competencies is, if people aren't competent, it's like, okay, there might be a gap, or they might have a certain skill set. Is like, what are we missing? What are we missing in the project delivery? And then the other one that you mentioned was absolute clarity. What are we aiming for? And this isn't just Gantt charts and various hypotheses. This is about real targets on the ground. What do we need to achieve today, then tomorrow, then the next day, and really mapping that out. That sounds like a great process. Jason, so on that is, what are the mistakes that you see people making, when it comes to project management and successfully delivering a project? Like, where does it go so wrong? And, what do they do? Is it just, some of the things that we see, from my experience is they just try and, start by project managing by email. And, but what are the mistakes that you see, going in, here's a project, it's gone off the rails, what got people to that point? If you could elaborate on that, that'd be terrific.
Yeah, you mentioned one straight off the bat there was management by emails. I mean, gone. Well, it seems like gone are the days where we used to get up out of our desk and go chat to people and get an understanding. Emails can cause so many issues because people will take the tone of an email wrong, or won't quite have the detail that's required, or like the biggest one is people misinterpret what you're trying to say, where a simple conversation would have got you past the issue straight up. I've got no problems with using email as a confirmation of what's been discussed, but have the chat first. You can't build a relationship with anyone over a computer typing backwards and forwards. And again, it's a case of, if you haven't built that relationship, when things go pear-shaped, you can't rely on that trust and transparency that you would typically build with someone by having those conversations, right? So that's a key one. One thing that sort of I've been concerned about for a long time with regards to project management in the current generation, and I've probably got to be a little bit careful about what I say, but going back to when we had the boom over here in WA back in, what was it, 2007 to 2012, the big iron ore boom, we had your BHP, Rios, all just going gangbusters, Woodside, building new plants and all the rest of it. We couldn't get enough people to fill the roles, right? So you had a lot of younger guys who hadn't done the hard yards at the lower levels first, getting promoted to levels 1 or 2 levels above what they were capable at the time. Now they've learned the technicalities. What they didn't learn was some of the commercial nous that you typically would have on a project, or how the really good planning that you would have to do, because you started off working on a little part of a project first, then your next job you work on the larger part, and progressively you work your way up through the levels and learn things. They were thrown into, and that was an industry decision. It's not a complaint on the individuals, for example. It's just that's what the industry did. And what we're finding now, or what I'm definitely finding, is a lot of the project managers that I've had to deal with, great people, and are really good at parts of project management, but didn't have that on the grounds early experience to understand some of the other parts, particularly from a commercial point of view. It's amazing how many project managers get into projects and they don't understand the basics of, I've got to get my EOTs and variation notices in on time, and what the implication is of not doing that. It's almost criminal what we allowed to happen, for us to get to that point. So that's one of those things where I think not having a real good grasp on what you've signed up to is a real issue with project management. I think there's also a real reliance on Gantt charts and these 4,000 or 4,000 page programs on large projects, which, let's be honest, no one reads, no one can understand where the hell all these lines are going and all the rest of it. I still very much get onto a site and I'll grab the layout of the site, or if I'm doing a bridge or something like that, I'll print the bridge up, and I'll print it up 50 times and say, right, on day one, this part I'm highlighting here is what I want us to work on. Day 2, now we're doing this part. So it's a very visual program, if you like. So I think I think we've, with all of technology and all the like, I think we've gone too technical with some of the stuff, and we've lost that tactile project management approach where we've come from the roots and learnt our way through the process. So that's where I'm finding, for me, a lot of the issues have come from that. And our industry does have a lot of really good project managers, but it also has a lot of guys who got there by jumping, probably missing a couple of real key areas during their progression up the ladder. And we're sort of suffering for it a little bit now.
The comment that you mentioned about technology in construction, and I'm a massive advocate for technology in construction as well.
Yep.
However, I think you're pointing out, I call it project management by abdication. It's like, we've given you all the information. It's this bombarding of subcontractors, and when you get a tier 1 or tier 2, they're living and breathing that one project, and particularly elements of that one project.
Yep.
And you've got subcontractors that might be spread across, 10 or 20 different projects. So they're only there part of the time. And it's that communication that, well, we've communicated with you, but they're not just because you're giving information through technology, it doesn't mean that it's been well received and well understood. And that's where it comes back to that relationships that you're talking about, is, understanding the capacity and capability. These subcontractors, for example, might be great on the ground, good at delivery, but they just don't have the infrastructure or people within their organizations to kind of meet in the middle of that project management understanding. And there's a real mismatch there, which causes a lot of grief down the line. So it's really
absolutely. And that's when I did go out on my own, leading the tier ones, that's exactly the market I sort of went into, because exactly the same thing. I actually did end up writing a book on it, which was, stop screwing your business, because what I found was exactly what you said, that the tradie guys who go into business for themselves, really great on the ground. They've got it, and a lot of them go into business because they either want that perceived better family life. They think they're going to have more time to themselves, which doesn't happen. When you first go into business for yourself, you end up doing more work than you were before. Great on the ground, know their trade, but have never had that business acumen or business training. So when I sort of gone away from the tier ones, I was actually helping them set up the back office side, the admin, making sure they were covered commercially. What do you need to do from a quality? What's your contract expecting? Reviewing of contracts, and just giving them the real basics and saying, listen, okay, this contract's 50 pages, 45 of it, don't worry about it. But these 5 pages, you've got to get right. Otherwise, you could lose your business. So there was a lot of my focus in there, and just really prepping them up for that. And one of the things that, as working with the tier ones, that I'm a big believer in is getting your subcontractors in and having these. I mean, what seems to have gone by the wayside on a lot of projects is these, weekly subcontractor meetings, where you get them all in the room for a meeting and say, right, this is the plan for the next fortnight. Do you have your resources? Is there any issues? What's the roadblocks? All those sort of things which are going to stop you from performing your project. You want to be well informed of that as well. You don't want to rock up on a Thursday thinking you're going to get 1,000 meters of cable pulled in the building, and realize that your Sparkies didn't even know they were supposed to be on site. So it's that communication again at all levels, not just that I've spoken to my engineers and they've told me it's all ready. You've got to have that confidence as well.
There's something to be said about looking people in the eye and talking through a program, and just making sure that it's understood about what we're trying to achieve for the week, the month ahead, and really focusing on the key aspects without all the noise and fluff, going, here's where we're going and where we need to be.
Yep.
Jason, some of these larger clients that you've dealt with, the tier ones, they do have levels of management that they, so it's very contractual these days and very formal. And you've identified a gap between where subcontractors, they've certainly got the ability and skill to deliver the work.
Yeah,
it's about that communication, all these softer skills that are kind of missing. So, is there any tips that you have on the efficiency of delivering a project if you're going to be working for a tier one or a tier two? Is what's the minimum viable thing that's needed these days? What does that look like from on the ground? You mentioned safety and there's policies and hey, these 5 pages are really critical with knowing there. And then this other 30 pages, it's just waffle. It's not really, it won't really come to bite you. Can you explain a bit more about where you see that the efficiency of what do you need to focus on if you go into that scenario?
Yeah, so I suppose with my business, JD and Consulting and Engineering Solutions, that's there's myself and my brother and another partner. We're directors, and it's electrical contracting business. So we do a lot of work for clients like your Rios, Pilgrim, doing their electrical maintenance or contracting works. We also do works here in Perth for builders on hospitals, primary schools, and that sort of stuff. So we've had to learn some of this stuff because coming as a tier one, a project manager in a tier one company, everything's set up for you, and you've got all the stuff you need to deal with these things, right? So even someone like myself who sort of goes back into that contracting game, you sort of go back in there thinking, right, I've got all the people, and you look around and go, no, actually, no, I haven't. I'm the people. So how am I going to best set this up? And what I've always done with regardless of which subcontractor I've worked with in the past to help them out, I've always drawn up an org chart for them. Now their name might be in every single box to start with, right? But that's just to show them these are all the things you need to be responsible if you're going to work for these sort of clients, whether it's tier one or a tier two. they're expecting someone to look after your safety. They're expecting someone to look after your commercial, all that sort of stuff. And at the moment, that's all you. So which ones do you think you can handle? Which ones do you think you can't? And let's say it is the commercial management, right? There's companies out there who will give you someone for a day, a fortnight, or whatever it is. They'll literally act as your representative. Get them on board. You second it out to a specialist. Same, we do that with our business at the moment. I mean, I've got more than enough commercial acumen to look after the business, but for me, it's the time. So I'll get someone who's better placed for that. So we've got someone who looks after all our commercial stuff, but they only charge us the 10 hours a week they do. It's not a full-time employee. So yes, there is a cost, but that cost is minimal compared to what we could potentially lose. Same with safety. I've got, we've now got someone who, for a few hours a month, just make sure that we're compliant and ticking all the boxes and all that sort of stuff. So it's building your business to suit your current size, but having the right players in play, and then understanding which parts you can do. And if there's particular parts you want to do, like for example, I'm a bit as an engineer, a bit weird. I don't mind the bookkeeping side of things and keeping it on the accounting sides, right? So I've got myself trained up a little bit on that because I still like to have the finger on the pulse with regards to that. I don't want to give that responsibility to someone yet. So I took some time to train myself up with regards to that. But then in those other areas, don't shirk them because you need them, especially when you're going with those bigger clients. There's an expectation. And once you sign that contract, whether you've got someone looking after it or not, they're expecting it. And they won't sort of feel all sorry for you and stuff if you don't get things done. No, you signed the contract. You promised us that you're going to provide these services. So I think that's always the first point for me, is understand all the responsibilities that you have within your business, what you're willing to take care of and able to take care of yourself, whether it's you or your wife or a business partner, whatever, and then get those key areas managed by someone, but fully understand that they don't need to be a full-time employee. They can be someone that you contract in for half a day a week or whatever it is, just to make sure that you're on top of what you need to be on top of. And it's money well spent, it really is.
That's an interesting one, Jason, because one of the questions that I was hoping to raise with you and talk about, which I think is really important, is if you're a smaller contractor and you know that you've got better capability on the ground to deliver than someone winning contracts, but you just don't have that, commercial acumen and the roles that you said were absolutely necessary, is, for someone to, how do you inspire confidence in, getting into those projects? And which I think you've answered in a lot of forms. There's a lot of expertise in the marketplace where people have worked for the tier ones, such as yourself, with 30 odd years of experience, that are for a very small fee monthly, like a safety manager can come in, make sure your safety's there and be your representative. And being able to pull together a team of individuals collectively and collaboratively, a small player can actually go into a tier one with absolute confidence, saying, hey, I can deliver. I've got, this sort of skill set in-house, and this is what we do best. But here's how I prop myself up by having, these other three people that, we've covered off on safety, we've covered off on compliance, we've covered off on contract administration and things like that. That's a fantastic way to approach that.
Yeah, and
anything else that you would see there, Jason?
I was going to say, just to add to that point, because from the JDN point of view, we started less than 4 years ago, and for the first year and a half, it really was just scraping around, just trying to build things up. We weren't really getting a lot of work. Myself and my brother were still contracting, and I still work outside of the business. But we were trying to keep overheads low. So we were probably lucky if we turned over $1 million a year, if that, in the first couple of years. Then we had a massive spike. We're at a point now where our forecast budget for this next financial year, going into our fourth year of business, is potential turnover of nearly $10 million for the year. So it's been a really big increase. Now we've been able to do that by, if I count the safety person, we've got a commercial person who's working for us, and we've got our payroll now getting done externally as well, those sort of things, and HR. I reckon I'm probably spending in the order of maybe 30 to 40K max across all those disciplines to look after all that part of the business for us. And it's being done by professionals. It's not being done by a hack like myself who sort of knows a little bit here and there. It's actual professionals looking after the business. Now, you tell me where you're going to find even a basic administrator for 40 to 50 grand a year. You're not, but this is looking after a real core function of our business. So, and that's like I said, that's looking after quite a considerable turnover for this next financial year. You don't have to spend that much if you're a smaller player. Like if you're in the $1 million to $2 million a year, you might only need to spend a max of 10K to look after safety, HR, commercial for a year, and it protects your business. And it's not just protecting your business from commercials against tier one. I mean, HR could protect you against a claim from an employee, unfair dismissal or whatever it is. All these things which you need to take into consideration, which you don't think of when you first go into business. You're just thinking, hey, I can do this better than my boss. I'm going to go start myself. So that's a real. I can't stress that part of it enough. I think that's just really important. Is get the right people around you. I think another point when you're trying to get in with the larger clients is, don't be afraid to show them what you've done, and that might be okay. You may not have been in business for yourself at that time when you've done it, but if you've worked on some major projects under someone else's banner and you were the leading hand or the supervisor on that project and it was successful, share that with them. Let them know. Let them know what you're capable of, and the teams you've led and all that. Don't be scared to get yourself out there. There's a lot of people who are really worried about what might be thought of them if they put themselves out there a bit. I don't know why they are these days with Facebook and Instagram and all those other social medias. People tend to get themselves out in every way, shape, or form without any issue. But it's selling yourself as a real alternative is an art, and it's something that I think as tradespeople who are wanting to build their business, you've got to put yourself out in front of clients, and don't be the sort of person who thinks, oh, geez, I'm looking for $500,000 jobs, but that client's only given me a $10,000 opportunity. I'm not going to take it. No, grab it and do it well, because then the next one will be a $15,000 job. Do that well. That's how you grow with the larger clients. They're not going to come out and give you a big package straight up, because there's too much of a risk involved for them. And as much as, sometimes there's that tier one and subcontractor bashing, they don't want to set you up to fail because it's bad for them as well. As a tier one manager of projects, you could be a great person and all that sort of stuff. But if I don't think your business is able to do $1 million or $2 million package for me, I'm not going to give it to you because I can't afford you to fail. But if you want an opportunity, hey, here's 10 grand's worth of work. Show me what you can do on that, and then slowly build that up. So I think that's part of it as well. Sometimes we let ourselves get in the way. Maybe it's the pride thing or something. No, I'm better than that. I can do more than that. Yeah, you probably can, but it's that building the trust, transparency. Getting that relationship built. That's how you do it.
Yeah, and like as you mentioned, you've started a business recently, fairly young, and going from startup to 10 million, it is a journey. And suddenly it's like, normally I have heaps of people around me, but I've got to do everything and bootstrap it. And one of the things that we talk about a lot here, it's really about focusing on those fundamental things that are absolutely necessary in growing a business, and that is really marketing, sales, and leadership of delivery. All of the other functions of business with regard to your HR, your payroll, your safety, all of those things absolutely necessary, but it's not a core function. And you can bring in all these experts, and the comment you made earlier about showcasing, saying, what did I work on before? I've had experience and here's what we did. And one of the things that I like to focus on, it's really about the landscape. If you can articulate back to a tier one client of understanding their landscape and how these were progressed in the past, and what hurdles and things, and knowing what they need to put to their bosses, and what they need to see it as successful, is if you can demonstrate that you understand what their pain points are and how you would overcome that with your service, whereas others don't, and really putting yourself out there, that's the way you win.
Yes, no, 100% agree. And again, it's the market. We're lucky with our business in that We didn't start a business as guys who had been tradies for 2 or 3 years and thought, let's go and start a business. Both myself, my brother, and the other business partner, Nick, we've all got 20, 25, 30 years plus experience in our relative fields. So there was already an inbuilt trust and confidence with a number of the clients we had gone to. They were guys who we had either worked for, or they'd worked for us over a long period of time. So they knew what we were capable of. And for us, it was very easy also to get tradespeople in, because again, a lot of these guys had worked with us or for us in the past. We weren't trying to drag people in. So for us, it was a very different landscape to someone who's like I said, not long out of being in the trade themselves, but wants to go into business. There's a lot of upfront work you've got to do to build that trust. We already sort of had that to some degree. So like I said, our journey was probably a little bit different. But having said that, with that experience, then there comes that I suppose expectation from clients that, well, that you're supposed to have this and this in place because you've been in the industry for so long. So we're expecting, even though we haven't asked for it, we're expecting it from you because so it's
you can't shortcut the process.
Yeah, very different problem.
Sometimes dealing with your own money too is different than a tier 1 or tier 2s. And some people might be, in the moment thinking, oh, look, we could just save a bit of money and not put that in function, but they would be wrong in that instance. And I think that's what you've said is, hey, if you're coming to the table of a tier 1, you can still hire all this expertise, but set up arrangements where you can get a safety officer in at very low cost each month to make sure that that's handled. And it just means that that's not something more that you're trying to take on. And I think as business owners, when you're first starting out, people that don't have that experience, they still try and do everything. They go, oh, look, it's only 10 minutes. I'll just keep handling this. Oh, it's only 10 minutes. It's only 10 minutes. All those 10 minutes add up. But sometimes outsourcing it to get it going might take an hour or 3 hours or even a week or more to establish it and get it in place. But it's absolutely well worth that process to get that in place to get going.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, from my point of view, I think it's important that you know enough that when you're interviewing someone for those positions or talking to someone about taking that on, that you know enough to know that they're not pulling the wool over your eyes as well. But you don't need to be the expert in it. That's why you're going to them for. I think one thing that COVID's probably taught us, and I was always a big advocate for this even before COVID, with technology, my view was, unless you're actual feet on the ground tradie who has to physically be there doing stuff, I don't need to have my staff in an office sitting next to me so I can keep an eye on them and make sure, well, geez, they walked in at 8 o'clock and they left at 5. Okay, I'll mark that. For me, it's all about, this is what I expect to get done by the end of the week. As long as you've got it done. If it took you an hour or 40 hours, I don't care. What I need was done, And so it's one of those things. I think there's more trust now with people working remotely, either from home or on a beach in the Maldives or wherever it is they're working from. There's more trust there. And I think COVID has helped that. Like I said, I think as a trading business owner, in particular, you've got to be comfortable that some of your help won't be sitting alongside you, 24/7, but they will be available for you 24/7. To answer those big calls. And that's not a case of, you still need to know enough to deal with the small stuff. You don't want to keep going back to them and getting them to charge you hours for stuff which really you could do yourself quite quickly. But knowing that they're there to tackle those big ticket items, so you prevent yourself from getting into trouble. Unfortunately, a lot of us will make those phone calls to the professionals when something's occurred and it might already be too late. You flip it on its head, make that phone call now, get them lined up, get them protecting you early so you don't have to make those phone calls later. Or if you do, you're protected enough that you're going in with the shoe on your foot, not the other side, not the other way around, So yeah.
I guess from a lot of the discussion we've had here today, it's being clear about the results that you're looking for. If anyone's working for you, I like to see it as treat everyone as if they're a volunteer workforce. If you treat everyone as a volunteer, there's a mutual respect that, if you've got and built the rapport and the relationship, is communicating clearly what results you're looking for. And a good operator will figure it out for themselves. The ones that don't, that you have to micromanage and things, aren't really suited to your team. So replace them with a better person. And sometimes, you're paying for 40 hours someone might be able to do something in 2 hours, even though it might be 3 times the rate. But if they're they got expertise in that area, that's what I'm hearing you saying. Hey, surround yourself with really good people, and
Yes.
outsource to absolute specialists to get one of these larger projects and work with the tier ones.
Yeah.
And relationships being probably the most key part of the way you operate is, build rapport, relationships. So it's like, mate, I really need something. I'm in a bind. Can you help? Because you've got that rapport and you've built up and you've been fair to them over the years. Is they will drop everything and help you in that moment where you need it.
Exactly, and there's the flip side to that too. They know they'll get that from me as well, and that's it. It needs to be two-way. You can't be just constantly taking from the relationships that you build. You need to be making their life easier as well. So yeah, it is really about a two-way street. And I know a couple of times I've had people sort of pull me up before, and they sort of say, "Are you sure you're an engineer?" And I say, "Why? Engineers don't usually, have the people skills that you sort of have." And I said, "I was a pretty average engineer, but I could talk to people, so that's why I do what I do." Don't get me to design anything; it probably won't last too long. But yeah.
Look, I think that's some great advice. Is relationships is a two-way street, and it's about how do you make it that everyone wins. It can't be just the head contractor, or say if you're contracting and you have subcontractors yourself, you can't always put yourself first. Is how do you set up a project that they win also, so that everyone wins along the way? And that's some really great advice. Two-way.
Yeah, and it's about making sure, especially on a project, that everyone's clear on what the objective is. I think again we get caught up in ourselves of, as project managers or leaders within a business, that we are clear on what we're trying to achieve, and then we're just telling people tasks. They need to understand the tasks they need to do, but give them that vision as well. What is the goal? Because you'd be surprised. I mean, I remember my old man many years ago. We were on a concrete job, and the engineer came along and gave the guys an absolute bollocking. And my dad just turned to me and he goes, "If you ever end up like that, I'll beat the living crap out of you." He goes, "You need to work with the guys, ask them questions. They've been doing this for so long that you might think you know the right way, but one of the boys on the ground will know a better way. Get them involved. So if they know what the vision is, what you're trying to achieve, there's always someone in that group who's going to go, yeah, we can get it by that date by doing it the way you're saying, or I reckon we can shave a week off if we do this." So be open to the ideas on the floor. And I think we, again, as project managers and engineers, we don't always give that credence to the guy who's got all those years of experience on the floor, because we don't, it's almost like a bit of a class war. You don't see them at your level, but these guys are doing what they're doing because they're good at it, and they've been doing it for a long time. So take the information off the floor. You could save yourself a lot of time and money.
It is that practical expertise of years and years of doing it that can make a job run smooth or not. So that's really great advice. Jason, fantastic. This has been really terrific talking with you this morning. And I really want to thank you for coming on and sharing your experiences and, how from your journey and some of the issues that you've faced and lessons learned along the way. And particularly a later discussion of how do you drive confidence in the tier ones with, surrounding yourself with good people and expertise. And so it's really been great for our listeners this morning. Have you got any final words that you'd like to say about project management and for business owners, that you're seeing on the landscape of the current industry? Is where do you see the biggest challenge? And, have you got any last insights into that you could share today?
Yeah, obviously, there's the challenges across the country with regards to labour. There's a lot of projects. Obviously, there's a lot of stimulus put out there to keep the economy going during COVID. And what we're seeing now is a culmination of, a lot of mega projects across the country that are all struggling for good resources. For us, as a contractor at JDN, we pretty much have a 1-to-1 ratio with our tradies and our apprentices. We want to train people up to work the way we want, and that's how we're getting over that sort of labour issue a little bit. We're sort of investing in ourselves and others by doing that. It's probably a bit easier in an electrical game where you can put a TA pulling cable. You just need the sparky to do the terminations on the two ends, that sort of stuff. But I think investing in yourself that way is important. We can't just be looking to governments to solve our labour issues. We've got to be proactive about it, and that can mean you may be spending a little bit more at the moment in yourself for a longer term return. That would be number one. I think number two, as a project manager or a business leader or business owner, don't be scared to make decisions. I see that everywhere. Guys will just procrastinate for fear of getting the decision wrong. What they fail to realize is if you fail to make a decision, you've actually decided not to decide on something. So you still are making a decision, but you're just going nowhere with it, you know? So for me, it's always been a case of take the information that you've got in front of you, make the best possible decision you can based on that. And you know what? If you get it right, great. If you get it wrong, then change the decision, keep moving. At least you're still moving with the project. I think we get caught in this ripple of procrastination for so long. And that filters down through the entire team. Then all of a sudden, you'll find that your entire team is too scared to make decisions on things because you're not as the leader. So, I'm not saying make rash decisions. Use the information you've got, but don't procrastinate. And don't be someone who fails to make a decision for fear of getting things wrong. We'll always stuff it up, but it's only a failure if you fail to then keep moving after that. So that's probably the two key points: invest in yourself and your team, and be a decision maker as a project manager. And you're probably about 70% of the way there.
Now that's terrific. I guess it's that thing, isn't it? Is don't be afraid to get out and kick the dirt. Get all the team involved and say, hey, I don't know the answer, but collectively we can work this out. And having that expectation that you can make the decision then and there with all the players.
Absolutely.
Jason, fantastic coming on this morning. Great talking to you. And thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks very much, Warren. Really enjoyed it, mate. And a pleasure to be on. Happy to be on anytime, mate.
Terrific. Thanks, Jason. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Warren.